Hi, this is Patricia Hazell for Patricia's Potpourri. And as you know, this episode and all past episodes of Patricia's Potpourri is on YouTube. Well, the journey continues. And at Lincoln Hospital, there is a special conference on Alzheimer's. And it's a part of the program in which we started with Roberto Reyes, Alzheimer's specialist. So, Mr. Director, could you take us to Lincoln Hospital so we can continue this journey?
Hi, my question is Alzheimer prevalent among men more so than women, or there's no
Yeah, so this one I will translate because I think it's of interest to everybody. So, la pregunta es si la enfermedad de Alzheimer es más común en mujeres que hombres. So the question is Alzheimer's more common in women than men? So that's controversial, okay? As you can see, I showed a graphic that suggested that Alzheimer's disease is more common in women than men. So there's two schools of thought, okay? One school of thought is that yes, definitely, that women are at a higher risk of Alzheimer's than men. And there's a lot of research going on about genes, hormones, why this is, okay? There's another school of thought that believes that the only reason why there's that difference is because women live longer than men, okay? But there's a controversy that hasn't been resolved.
Dr. Katrina Sellis is a project manager for the Alzheimer's Disease Sequencing Project, follow-up study for John P. Husman Institute of Human Genomics at the University of Miami. So they came from Miami just now. Kind of a little envious of the weather. Well, that's okay. It's raining here too. She oversees the research related to the genetics of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease in minority populations. She earned her medical degree at the Universidad de Carabobo in Venezuela and her medical genetics research fellow at Columbia University in New York. She has 10 years of experience in genetic research, and her previous work includes discovery of candidate genes and variants associated with congenital heart disease, cardiomyopathy, left lip and palate, congenital diaphragmatic hernia, and developmental delay.
I come from the Husman Institute of Human Genetics. Our director is Dr. Margaret Perry-Check-Vance. She is sorry that she couldn't be here today. She had another event to go to, but she's one of the world-renowned geneticists, especially in Alzheimer's disease. She was the founder of the ApoE gene, which is the gene that was described by Dr. Lusinger that has the highest risk associated with Alzheimer's disease, and we're going to talk about a little bit more about that in a second. And our role in the Institute is basically trying to find or discover genes that are associated with Alzheimer's disease among other diseases. And what we try to do is try to apply that knowledge and try to find either better ways to prevent the disease, to have better treatments, or to try to prevent the prognosis of the condition. Because it is such a priority in healthcare, Alzheimer's disease worldwide, right? And especially in the United States. There was a disappointment when all this money and all this effort was put into amyloid treatments and nothing really worked. So what happened? So when Obama was in House, there was a, they signed this contract, right, between the NIH, which is the National Institute of Health, and the government. That's Dr. Collins, which is the head of the NIH, and our ex-president Obama. And they signed a contract for $50 million to give to Alzheimer's research to try to find something to help people either treat the disease or do prevention of the disease or better early diagnosis of the condition. So out of that, 50% of that money, which is $25 million, was given to sequencing. meaning genetic studies, where we're trying to sequence the DNA of anybody with the condition and trying to find what's in their DNA that might be causing the condition. So the purpose was, like I said, to try to identify new and better drug targets for therapeutic intervention of AD. There was also the NAPA, which is the National Alzheimer Protective Act, and the idea to include everybody that we can in Alzheimer's disease to try to decrease the gap in health disparity in this condition. Because all this money was given, there was a lot of people that have done Alzheimer's disease in different centers of the country. So one of the rules for by Dr. Collins was, you guys as researchers have to work together. I'm not giving money in small centers or specific universities. You guys have to work together to try to find the cure or the right treatment. So all these centers, universities that you see on the slide are part of what is called the Alzheimer's Disease Genetic Consortium, or ADGC. So the ADGC was created to do this massive genetic project, right, to try to sequence DNA from people that has the disease and people that don't have the disease in order to try to find what's causing it. One of the things is that there is already some information out there, like Dr. Lusinger was saying, that there are some genetic factors already known. And you're going to say, well, why is it important that if you already know that there are some genes that are associated with the disease, why spend all that money doing the same? So there's a couple of reasons for that. One thing is that almost like 75 to 80% of the samples, or the people that participate in the studies that are part of the ADGC, are samples from studies from white populations of what they call non-Hispanic whites, or Caucasian or European backgrounds. So that's the first problem. Because you can't generalize a treatment for a population that is diverse based on a study that is done in one specific population. So that's one problem. The second problem is that, as you can see in this graph, there is the ApoE gene on red. There is kind of like a yellowish area where there's the common variant genes, which is a group of genes that are known to have some association with the condition. There's the presenilin 1 and 2, which is the PSEN1 and PSN2, which are thought to be genetically inherited in an autosomal dominant way, which means that if a parent has it, the child has a 50% chance of having it, and usually these type of families have an early onset type of Alzheimer's disease, and it's not a big percentage. It's usually 5 to 10% of the population. And there is also some rare variants on blue that are new coming. They're rare variants that are not common in the population, but now are thought to be related to some cases of Alzheimer's disease. But as you can see on green, on your left side, almost 50% of that pie, of that circle, it's unknown. So there's a lot to be found that at this point we don't know genetically. So that's the second reason why this is important.
Hi, my name is Julio Gonzalez. I'm the case manager for R.A.I.N Multi-Services, and I'm part of this conference where we're here in Lincoln. The thing of this conference is to provide education to our community to know what's going on, what is Alzheimer, what it affects the medical, and also sometimes the caregiver is overwhelmed and stressed. And we help our community to give information about how you take care of yourself. What you do in the middle of this situation for Alzheimer. It's a blessing over here, many people is here, and we enjoy, and we invited you to call us R.A.I.N Multi-Services, Alzheimer Caregiving Program, 347-346-9676. Somebody transfer your call Alzheimer office. Take care and have a wonderful day.
Something that you might remember from your high school or your middle school. Why is it important to know genetics? And the reality is that we all have our genetic DNA, right? And our genetic DNA varies from person to person. Even though 99% of our DNA looks very similar to each other, that 1% that has the difference between individuals may be very important in terms of disease and other factors in our life. So in order to explain genetics, specifically in the Americas, right, we need to go back to history. So how is our genetics DNA or our genetic information built? How is it built? So we, and I say we because I am Hispanic as well. So the Americas they got their DNA from the colonization process. So when the Americas were colonized, right, remember there was mainly Europeans that came to the Americas to take the land, work on the land, etc. They brought along as well some people from Africa to help them work the land. So when they got there, remember, they also found that there were people living there, which were native or Amerindian population. So there's a mix, right? So we have European background, we have African background, we have Amerindian or native background. And the percentage varies because, depending on how people were, creating their families or forming their families, that changed depending on where the colonization process was. And it's all about the admixture, right? Nowadays, it's very difficult to say that there is a pure population. There are very small areas where they limit themselves to a certain area, and either because of religious, because of geographic locations, but the rest of the world, it's very mixed. Now you have people that are from the Americas, they get married with people from Europe, from Asia, from Africa, so there's no way to stop that mixture. That's the reality.
Hi, today we're representing the Visiting Nurse Service of New York for the In-Home Geriatric Mental Health Program. Today we're here talking about our geriatric program for seniors. They have to be 60 and over for our program. We're a grant-funded program, so we're free for any senior adult that would need supportive counseling and assessment in-home. If they need any further linkage, what we usually do is that we link them out into the community. We provide 6 to 8 weeks of supportive counseling at home. We provide services for seniors in both language, both English and Spanish as well.
This is probably one of the most important graphs that I'm going to share with you guys today. And this is the reason why we are doing what we're doing, the genetic studies and minority population. So I'm going to try to orient you in this graph. So from left to right, there's 4 different colors, and I think it's hard to see with all these lights, but I'm going to try to explain it. So from left, you have a yellow color, which means people with almost 100% or pure African background, so people from Nigeria and the African continent. And then you have in red people with Asian background, and then you see people on the far right, which are blue, which are mainly European. And there is a big group in the middle, which is mixed. And from left to right, there's the first group that is mixed. It's called the Central Amerindian. The green color is native, or Amerindian population, or what we call founders. So as you can see, there's differences in between colors from each area or each country. And in the first one, when you see the Central Amerindian, you barely see the blue, which means they don't have too much European background. They have probably 70 to 80% Amerindian background, and they have a slight 10 to 15% Asian background and a little bit of African background. When you move down the right, you find the first country in South America, which is Colombia, where you see a dramatic shift. So you see almost 50% or more of blue area in there, which means they are more European. They're like 60% European. But you see more of the yellow. You don't see too much red. So they are almost 60 to 65% European. They're 25-ish African, but they're and 25 African and 25 Amerindian, but there's not much Asian background in there. Then you move to Peru, which you would think, well, they're kind of close to each other, Colombia and Peru, but there's a very big difference. Now they are 65 to 70% Amerindian, which is the green color. They're like 20% European, but then you see a lot of red going inside. They have like 20% or 50% Asian background. And then you move to Argentina, which is close to Peru, and then that European ancestry also shifts. It goes up to 75, almost 80%, and then a little bit of African, a little bit of Asian, and a little bit of Native. And then the countries in the far right are mainly European. And you will think, well, yeah, whatever, we know this, why is this important? And the reality is that even though we used to think that our genetics are important just because how we look, or how our culture is, or what we eat, or how we tend to call our grandmas, or something like that, it is very important for health. And the reality is that even if you think that your genetics just give you how you look or your phenotype background may not correlate with your genetic background in a specific condition. And let me break down that a little bit more. Even though you think that the phenotypic part may be associated with everything else in your body, the reality is that that's not the case. So in this graph, this is a chromosome plot. So this shows you there's 23 chromosomes, but here we're only showing 22 chromosomes. We took the sex or the gender chromosome out, right? So you have, on the left side, you have 1 to 22, meaning the 22 chromosomes that we all have. They are not related to sex or gender. And then on the right side, you have the amount of DNA per chromosome that we have. So let's say we want to know about that ApoE4. So there was one question where they asked, what's the relation between the ApoE4, or how can I get my ApoE4 testing? Am I at greater risk? Am I at lower risk? And what my boss has found is that ApoE4 has a greater risk in Europeans or people with European backgrounds. But there's not too many certain knowledge about ApoE4 in Africans or Hispanics. Is it that they have less risk, or is it that they have protective variants of that gene and they just suffer other variants for other genes? We don't know for sure. And when we started to do this research, we wanted to see specifically in that chromosome 19, where the ApoE4 lives or resides, right? Where is your background in that specific area? So this is just a reference data. And I'm going to try 2 points. So this is chromosome 19. And let's say
we have a caregiver who's coming to talk to you directly about this disease, what it's doing to her and her family. This isn't easy standing up here in front of a bunch of people and speaking. So for someone to come, and actually from a great distance, okay, to come and want to share a little bit about, a little piece of what's going on in their current lives is pretty powerful. So I'm going to ask that you give them, or give her, some of your attention, okay? And keep the noise down to a minimum, please. So without further ado, I'm going to give Jessica a quick presentation over here.
Gracias. Hola.
Okay. Jessica is kind of bilingual. Okay, so this is gonna be a conversation. I'm just gonna ask her a couple of quick questions. Le voy a hacer dos o tres preguntas rapidito y ella me va a responder lo mejor que puede. She's gonna answer me as best as she can. Okay, so Jessica, how long have you been a caregiver?
So I've been a caregiver for my mother since 2014, but in 2013 I was doing an internship in Washington, D.C., and I had many opportunities to leave Washington, D.C. to go to the rest of the country, but I knew something was wrong. And I knew we didn't have a diagnosis, but I'd seen enough people with Alzheimer's to know it was probably Alzheimer's. And I knew that if I didn't come home back to New York, we weren't going to get a diagnosis, and she was going to be on her own during the day, and it was not going to be good. Something was going to happen. So I came back to New York, and in 2014, so now this is the whole 2013 that I was in DC, 2014, it took until March to get her to go to the doctor with somebody. So my mother's a very stubborn person, so it took until March. We went with her to the doctor, and apparently the doctor had been giving her these tests for years, but sent her back out into the world. And she has Alzheimer's. She forgot what she was told. It's very sad, but very true. And so finally my father went with her, and somebody, when they got home, remembered she had Alzheimer's. And that was it. We were given a diagnosis, we were sent out into the world, and we got to follow up with a neurologist who said, yeah, she's got Alzheimer's. What more do you want? Why are you calling for a checkup? We're like, don't you want to study this or something? No? Bye. And we were lost.
How did it make you feel?
We were lost. I was like, I'm somebody with like multiple degrees. Like, thank God for the internet and like my research abilities, and I found caring kind. But what do people do who, and I felt bad for people who don't know what to do, who don't know how to research things, and that was my first reaction. I was like, I know what I'm in for, but what about the people who don't know where to turn and just are burdened and don't have the time to look for information? So I knew we were going to be in for it. It was a wild ride, because really the first thing that was affected was her behavior and her mood. And so my mother is pretty funny and pretty sharp, and it was like living with a caged beast. And that's a weird thing
Can you
to say about your
expound on
mother.
that a little bit? How did she change?
She became aggressive, and this is not even sundowning. This was all day long. She was very aggressive, borderline violent. We had to start hiding the knives. We had to start hiding scissors. This is somebody who had never had any tendencies like this. Very nurturing, a little sassy, but nurturing. and we couldn't have candles. We couldn't have anything that would allow her to throw at us. And she almost threw hot wax at me one day with a lit candle. Almost punched me a few times.
So as a caregiver, I started an Instagram account. And some people do support groups. For me, creating an Instagram account where I could document our lives, the good and the bad of Alzheimer's, is what's been helpful to me. So whatever your creative outlet is, find something that gives meaning to your everyday. Because caregiving is rewarding, it's challenging. And so that's why I have an Instagram, and it's Hilda ALZ Nails. And if you want to come check it out, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's the reality of the toughness of life with Alzheimer's. But we try to keep it real so that we're not sugarcoating this horrible disease.
Hi, my name is Brandon Job, and I'm a hydroponics training specialist at SOBRO. SOBRO stands for South Bronx Overall Economic Development Corporation. And we do a lot of different work, been around for over 40 years in the South Bronx and also Upper Manhattan, doing career development, real estate development, and really just helping the economic viability of the community. Right now, as I said, I'm a hydroponics training specialist, and I go around to middle schools, elementary schools, senior centers now, and teach people about how to grow plants hydroponically from start to finish, from germinating the seeds and things like rock wool, which is actually rock and sand that is heated up. It makes this kind of spongy material, right? So it doesn't contaminate the plants or the water solution that waters it. Also, another thing we use is coconut husks. And you can do it indoors, outdoors. Ideally, a greenhouse is where it should be because you can do it all year round and really save money that way on your groceries. And we're really looking forward, to doing this more with senior centers and other schools next year, after school as an after-school program, and finding it's therapeutic to all ages. And I myself am learning more and more, and it's been we're looking. There's been this constant trend of industrial agriculture, with cheaper foods and grocery stores. Whether it's lettuce, potato chips, potatoes, and we really just want to see more urban farming in the community. There's always constant development, green roofs, solar panels, and hydroponics should be right up there with it, because it's going to help the community create their own food and save money. Most of our food comes from the Midwest or overseas. Avocados in Mexico and other countries. And this picture, which you'll see later, it has a map of corn farms and other vegetable farms in the United States and how dense it is in each county within each state. And the orange dots represent government subsidies for $500,000. And as you see, it's right around the Midwest and Mississippi River, and not in New York City where we are. And our issues affecting our community are a lot different. So I think it makes no sense to be getting food, shipped all the way from there, paying the cost of gas, and transportation, when we could just be growing food on our roofs, on our vacant lots, in our backyards, and really just communicating as a community what we need to be sustainable.
This conference was sponsored by R.A.I.N. For past episodes of Patricia's Potpourri and this, please go to YouTube.